It is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Houman Sadri. Dr. Sadri is Associate Professor of International Relations at the University of Central Florida, teaches both undergraduate and graduate level courses, including American Foreign Policy, Middle East Politics, Caspian Sea Politics, International Relations, International Political Economy, and International Organizations. He is also the founder and president of IPAC, a nonpartisan, nonprofit academic foundation and scientific research center dedicated to boosting educational skills, promoting productive communication, and creative problem solving through research and analysis, something much needed. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Come on up. Please welcome Dr. Houman Sadri.
I'd like to thank you. I always have enjoyed coming to your fellowship, and I feel very, very special, this weekend because it's the Memorial Day weekend. So I'm grateful to invite this pacifist, this old pacifist, which is 2 years away from retirement, hopefully, to your gathering. And I could identify with a number of things that you already have mentioned. Mike, you mentioned about, your friends and your service in Vietnam War. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you to all of our vets for their service. Really appreciate that. I also come from a family that there have been a number of people who have been in armed services. As a pacifist, that was not my choice in life to work directly with the DoD in a combat, zone. But, I have always done consulting for them. As a pacifist, we try to do the best we can so we can avoid actual combat. If we could somehow achieve our goal in a form of a compromise, that has been my passion in my life because my own personal life has changed due to wars and revolutions and everything else. So I do completely, sympathize with, what happened over there and to many of our young people. And especially, you mentioned as well that, in terms of, you have lost some relatives, your daughter to Agent Orange. My uncle Steve, uncle by marriage, we lost him to the same situation. He came back in one piece, but we think that he left a part of himself in Vietnam, and years later on, he developed this, very strange cancer, brain cancer, and died very, very quickly. So. And then I actually am a believer in, Spider-Man. As an academician, I love what he says, which is, with power comes responsibility. Is that right? That means a lot to me. As a political scientist, that means a lot to me. So I just, again, wanted to thank you for the fellowship. I've kind of summarized everything in about 15 minutes, very, very short, slides. Beth, if you would just please advance it to the very first one. So I want to make sure that we would have enough time for interaction. For me, it makes a lot of, joy to listen to your questions and comments, and so that would be really nice. Well, we are talking about what U.S. foreign policy toward two of our four major adversaries, according to U.S. Central Command. I wanted to tell you that, first of all, I do have two positions. One is with the University of Central Florida, and of course one is as a consultant for U.S. Central Command. But I do not speak on behalf of either one. So this is the disclaimer. Is that right? Since we are going to be recorded, I speak only on behalf of Hugh Sadri, okay? Not on behalf of any of them. And even when we do the work with the U.S. Central Command, we do not make American foreign policy. Okay, as academician, I was hired actually as a very, very rare breed, about 30 years ago, which obviously dates me. I know it's before some of you were born, okay? And that was, we were hired as a line to create a bridge between the academic world and what our military. And that line has been mothballed for a number of years, and my generation are going away, so I guess the decisions are going to be made in different ways. All we have done is always provide policy options. On every issue, and the crisis that we would end up at, there are two major things. One is how you observe that, and then how you come up with possible solutions. And then the decision has always been made by, of course, elected officials. And I don't like to pass the buck, but the reality is the general population, as they vote, they decide which direction they want to go, for good or for worse. All right, well, talking about the current administration and their policies toward two of our four major adversaries. According to U.S. Central Command, we have basically four major adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. And right now, in the last few days, as you know, it's not a secret, is that right? We have had a number of negotiations going, trying to bring a peace to, the crisis in Ukraine. Which is not a crisis, it's a war that, every day, there are hundreds of people dying, especially on the Ukrainian side. Of course, Russians are not immune either, but, on the Ukrainian side. And my heart goes to, because I was also affected in a similar situation with people who are usually very, very innocent. They die, is that right? If a rocket comes over there, it doesn't say, oh, this is a young person, this is this is that, I'm not going to hit you, I'm not going to kill you. And then the other one obviously deals with what? Negotiation with Iran, trying to avoid a major military conflict. Before we say something about that, I think we should really know something about the administration itself. I'm independent, I'm not a Republican or Democrat, which means I have very few friends, is that right? Because if you're a Democrat, you say, oh, the guy is a Democrat, he was my side. If you're a Republican, you say, no, he's on my side, But when you're independent and you say things, you don't have very many friends, okay? Let's face it, You don't have very many friends, that's number one. And then number two aspect of it is, I think that's an advantage. In my government position, I have institutional memory, because when the administration changes, those of us who are either Democrat or Republican, we change depending on the administration, but I've been around, and I have a tendency to express myself, as Madonna would say, is that right? I'm sure some of you do not know even who the heck Madonna is, but So Madonna would say that, I express myself and then remind them about, for example, oh, under such and such administration, we did something similar and this happened, Because a lot of the younger people, they have no idea about, okay, what the heck happened, until yesterday. So one of the challenges is right now, which is an advantage and a disadvantage with President Trump, is that he's a very strong person. At least this is his own perception of himself. He's a very, very strong person, and he respects strength, okay? The challenge with that is that he has a tendency not to be very empathic, in terms of, things that has happened. He has survived, 2 previous marriages, is that right? He's on the 3rd one, okay? He has children from a number of them. So one of the issues that he has is he respects also very, very strong people, okay? So it's kind of strange for me to say that, because my area of specialization with your Central Command is basically former Soviet republics and what? The Middle East. Is that right? In the Middle East, we have, and the center, what do you call it? Your former Soviet republics, we usually deal with the type of leaders we call patrimonial leaders. Okay? A patrimonial leader is a type of leader that basically runs the government like this is his own household. Okay? I mean, look at, for example, we are used to, is that right? Kings of Saudi Arabia, President Putin, and all those other strong people, okay, around that they have done that. So he brings, I never thought I'm going to talk about an American president like that, But this is what is happening. So what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? One of the advantages of the way he does things in a very, very unorthodox way. Okay? So sometimes there could be an opening. There's a possibility. It doesn't mean that it's going to always turn out to be positive, but sometimes there's a possibility. Like, for example, the standard policy of our country has been, this has nothing to do with me, has been that the United States of America does not negotiate with terrorists. Okay? It has been a policy under Republicans, under Democrats, under people who were somewhere in the middle. Well, guess what? He went and negotiated, despite the fact that some of my colleagues, they suggested, Mr. President, we do not talk with the terrorists. He talked with what? Hamas, which is considered a terrorist group. What was the positive side of it? He got an American out. Okay? So that is positive. Every life we can save is very, very important for me. And I'm sure for you as well. That's one. Then he has negotiated with the Houthis. So Houthis are going to, hit our ships and whatever a lot less, I mean, they're going to still do it from time to time, but they're going to still consider, Israel to be their enemy because they're on the side of, whatever, you see. And he has suddenly started to negotiate with Iran. You see, these are unorthodox things that we are hoping, is that right, to lead into something positive. The challenge with it is that contrary to all the previous administrations, that they usually rely on people who have an expertise, is that right, in their areas. If you look at his administration, it's basically divided between two groups, the realists and the neocons, okay? So there is really no major expert in either one of those fields, focusing on Russia, focusing on Iran, as of now. You know, we're not going to talk about, obviously, about the other ones. So that's one of the challenges. And there is, as you can see from some of the things that they say, is conflict. Very frankly, I think one of the best things would have been, with both groups, with both Russia and Iran, negotiation would be closed door. I know that this is not something that we democracies like to accept, but the best way to deal with, because those are also patrimonial leaders, is that right? Because all the patrimonial leaders, they want to look strong in front of their population, is that right? They would not like to show that, hey, I'm making this compromise after all these prices that we paid, is that right? So that would have been better. But unfortunately, some of the stuff, it keeps coming to the news, and that makes it actually more challenging. So one of the other things that I wanted to also emphasize is that these patrimonial leaders we have been talking about, especially two of them, our own president and President Putin, they have a tendency to think like a 19th century, leader. You see what I mean? 19th century leaders were basically focused on old capitalism. Old capitalism, which led into colonialism and imperialism, was focused mostly on old way of doing things. An old way of doing things was you control territory, because territory has some benefits, some minerals, something valuable, is that right? And then the people who are in that territory, they either become formally your slave or they become your cheap labor, is that right? What they do not understand is, in that one slide over there, you can see there is a, I wish I had a pointer right here, I can show you. You see that slide that shows the guy with the big hat or something, that shows the old version capitalism? Next to it, I do not know if you can see it very well. It shows the line of people who are there to get iPhone, just probably like your husband. Is that right? Because you said your husband is interested in iPhone while you and me are really in Android. Is that right? So here we go. You see? See, that is new capitalism. Nobody put a gun to the head of those people to do that. You see what I mean? So in the 21st century, trying to think about controlling land, controlling people by force. Look at what a beautiful thing Einstein said. Is that right? Force is not the way to do it. Is that right? So that is the way to handle it. And I say this one with one bias. I've studied, of course, former Soviet republics. I've studied Marx and Marxism. I have taught Russians about Marxism. Is that right? But I know what the problems are with that, even though the intention could have been very good. Is that right? I mean, Marx came to get rid of religions, but actually he created his own religion, and he had the beard, he had the book. Is that right? Very much like prophets. Is that right? Yeah. But the way it was implemented was it took away the notion of incentives. And capitalism, for lack of a better term, as simple as it is, you can take somebody out of grade school and teach them about that. Is that right? They don't need to have masters and Ph.D.s before they understand the complexity of Marxism. Is that right? It works with incentive. And that works. Now, the problem is, if you leave it alone, if you leave it over there without any kind of supervision or something, capitalism does some very, very weird stuff. Is that right? It creates these gaps between rich and poor. It, it does things that which is not acceptable. Is that right? In pure capitalism, people actually, they don't notice it. We can't even talk about this one, even with my students who are studying so much, that for pure capitalism, monopolies are absolutely okay. There is no notion of social welfare. There's no notion of, retirement and insurance and unions and things like that. There's not such a thing. These are all coming from what? Marxism. But we can't talk about it even at the college level, because nowadays, one of the things they tell us is, you have to watch out what you're saying in the class. Because the student is offended, they're going to go and sue the, professors and the department and the university and things like that. And nobody wants any kind of political issues, you see. So these are some of the things that, I can say about that one that he doesn't understand. Could we go to the next slide? Now, More specifically, what has he been doing with Iran? Very frankly, even before they start negotiating a few weeks ago, is that right? He actually added more sanctions to, against Iran, okay? I mean, this is not just the way to do it, but this is his way, because he likes to talk tough, is that right? And then he sees how much, if you listen to, the book that supposedly he has written, is that right? He pushes as much as he can to see where he hits, very, very high resistance. Then he pulls back, and then he negotiates. That's his style. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying this is bad. This is just his style. Is that right? Do I agree with it? No. But, we follow. Is that right? We do not order anybody to do something. So with Iran, we have had three major concerns. One concern has been, that captures the headline, is the nuclear issue. Is that right? Iranians are at the 60%. They're not close to 90%. Of course, some of their enemies, they say, no, they are very close to have it very, very soon. But they have been talking about that for the last 15 years, and Iranians don't have it yet. Is that right? Now, the second one is actually missiles. Is that right? They have very, very sophisticated missiles. I know that, in the last, type of, missile attack between each other, is that right? They sent about almost 300 missiles, and none of them hit, because we give a lot of credit to the Iron Dome of Israel. To be very honest with you, between the two of us, the Iron Dome is not as good as they say. It's very good against the, Palestinians' little missiles, homemade missiles. Is that right? It's not really good with Iranian missiles. Those are very, very sophisticated equipment. Is that right? What we do not give enough credit to all the American ships and the British ships that they have been lined up over there to catch that stuff. And all of our allies among the Arab states that some people say, oh, they're all our enemies. That's not true. Is that right? They provided what we call very, very important thing, information. For us in our field, information is power. And that information provided us with what? We knocked down all of those missiles, okay? But Iron Dome, that right now our president wants to be the Golden Dome, is that right? Okay, whatever, okay? Another waste of money, here we go. So, it has a limit. It can work up to a couple of hundred, but if you throw 1,000, these people have like 25,000 missiles. You see what I mean? If they just send 1,000, 2,000, that's it, you see? And unfortunately, geography wins, you see? Because Israeli population, Israel is a very small country. It's like the size of almost Connecticut, okay? And the population is concentrated in certain cities, very, very urban. So even if you have the worst aiming, eventually one goes through, that's enough, to kill thousands of innocent people. And of course, they're not going to sit, With Israelis, you don't deal with like, well, oh, we hit you and I'm Jesus, you hit my right cheek, I offer you my left cheek and then you can do it. No, no. They hit you on the right cheek, left cheek, they kick you in the butt, and they make sure that you die after they hang you. You see what I mean? So there's no if my butt may be about that one. So that would be basically World War III. You know what I mean? Because the other people are going to get involved. And here we are talking about peace and not talking about war. What we have suggested is confidence building measure. Well, this is what we did in, 2015 with the agreement that we had before, that let's first of all get rid of the first thing. Is that right? We release some of the sanctions. We have a freeze over the nuclear thing. When we build confidence, because let's face it, we don't trust them, they don't trust us. That's the bottom line. It's actually like a relationship between a couple that they have some problem. Is that right? So here we go. After that stage, the next stage would be what? We talked about your missiles. Then we talk about your proxies. You see, this is what we call confidence building measures. But if somebody comes over there and says, look, I have 4 years to make a difference. Is that right? And I've made all these promises. So they're in a kind of rush. And unfortunately, rushing in that regard doesn't work. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, well, here I put actually map of geography. See, geography doesn't lie to you. Is that right? And it shows that also, look, when we were in Iraq, is that right? How difficult of a war that was. In Afghanistan, our longest war, 20-year war. Is that right? How difficult it was. Now look at the what? Geography of Iran. Such a large country, such a big population, and then bombing Iran is not in our interest. Why? Because when you compare Iran and Saudi Arabia, is that right? Iran, based on our estimate, has a population that 75% of it is pro-US. It's the regime that people who are receiving what? Receiving basic subsidies from the regime that are anti-US. In Saudi Arabia, the regime is pro-U.S. and the upper echelon are pro-U.S., but the lower elements, the one that basically they led into the creation of Al-Qaeda and everything else, they became the soldiers for it, they're against us. You see what the strange situation it is? But because Saudi Arabia what? An ally, and Iran is obviously an enemy. So we don't want to do that. And then one thing that the president did, which we didn't agree, even though I'm a pacifist, is you don't say that, oh, we don't want to start any wars. You see what I mean? So that should be in the back mind of anybody, that if the diplomacy doesn't work, something can get worse. The problem with Iran is, like, have you seen those parents that they take their kids to Walmart and Kmart and keep in public beating them up? Is that right? And then later on, 20 years later, say, I do not know why my child ended up being so aggressive. Well, because they learn from you. Is that right? You know, they learn from you to act like that. All right. So the Iranians have been so much punished and under so much sanction from the first day that nothing really, you know, changed them. Oh, we had all these sanctions, they still funded all of their proxies. Is that right? We did all these sanctions, they still built, you know, toward, you know, the best missiles they can build under whatever limits that they have, and also the nuclear stuff. So we need to talk in a different way. We need to communicate with them in a different way for the cause of peace. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay. Well, I talked about this one already. Let's move on to Russia. I want to spend a couple of minutes on the... right here, with the focus on, you know, Ukraine, something you need to understand is both President, as I mentioned, President Putin and President, Trump, as I mentioned, they are thinking old-fashioned. Is that right? And they're thinking old-fashioned because, let's go to the next slide, because I wanted to show this one. Look at this. This is a map of Ukraine. Is that right? The map on the left side shows Ukrainian minerals. Look at some of the most precious Ukrainian minerals are on what side? The side that right now the Russians are occupying. Is that right? And notice that when President Zelensky came to, White House, and our president was pushing him for an agreement. Is that right? What were they really interested in? Hey, we signed an agreement over some of these minerals, especially rare, earth material. All of those cell phones that you're enjoying, all those computers, a lot of other equipment, is that right? They all need rare earth material. And unfortunately, in our country, we don't have it. We do have very little, but we don't have as much as we need. Is that right? So we've been importing it mostly from China so far. Is that right? And then what we were hoping is we can diversify our source of, imports by focusing on what? On what? Ukraine. So when the president talked to Zelensky about this one, he said, well, we can sign an agreement. And Zelensky was kind of young. You probably have all seen what happened in the White House. Is that right? When he was over there, it became like a shouting match and everything else, you see? He's a little bit young, and I think he fell down the rabbit hole, with the whole group that they kind of ambushed him. Is that right? If you notice, the president of South Africa handled himself very well. Did you see that? First of all, he had the right, team with him over there to defend. He stayed his cool. He talked his low voice. Is that right? And he tried to negotiate in that regard. So the issue right there is that those precious stuff right there, in addition to, of course, the geopolitical factor, one of the reasons that the Russians, they want Crimea is because they do not have very many ports that are open 12 months of the year, and Crimea is always open, you see? And that's one of the things. So they want that one because that one doesn't have really minerals. Is that right? But the rest have something to do. So we need to come up with some kind of solution, hopefully, that not just the global powers, but also the local ones would be happy about, and we can save lives. That's what my main point is. If you could go to the next, couple of slides. What I did, I know that you guys think a lot. You ask a lot of good questions. I put basically, created a comparison of the topics that I've been talking about, from sanctions all the way to Ukraine support and everything, into two different administrations, the Trump 2025, because notice the Trump 2025 or Trump 2.0 is very different from 1.0. Is that right? So I put that one in relationship to Biden. As you can see, there are advantages and disadvantages in each one of those cells, but I thought that would make it a little bit more organized. If you can go to the next slide, I have a little bit of a promotion right here. A lot of things that I talked about Iran. This is a book that I published a couple of years ago with U.S. Central Command, and focused on the proxy aspect and everything else. You do not need to buy. I always tell everybody, please do not buy books. That's what public libraries are for. This one, you don't even need to even go to your public library. You see that address right there? All you need to do is just you go to the government, printing office, you can download it for free, okay? So don't buy it. That's one. Next one, please. And the next one that deals actually with Russia and, what Russia has done before, is that right? Because these are finished war. It focuses on the Caucasus region and everything. That's available if you go to the next slide. This one also, you can, basically take the website of it, you print it, you take it to your local library. You say, would you please order it? They would order it. And when it's ready, they email you so you can get it for free. Is that right? I don't think you should actually buy books and everything. So with this one, I would like to stop right here and open it up to questions from you. And thank you so much for listening to me and not throwing any, tomatoes or eggs or something at my face. Thank you. Okay.